My brother Lucas got the golden ticket. Our parents handed him the keys to their $1.5 million home in Los Angeles like it was some kind of family tradition. Me? I got Grandpa Walter's 40-acre farm in the middle of rural Kentucky, a place that hadn't grown a single ear of corn or blade of wheat in 22 years. Lucas's inheritance was sleek, modern, sitting right in one of L.A.'s best neighborhoods, the kind of place people dream about owning. Mine was nothing but cracked earth, collapsing fences, and a barn that looked like one good storm would finish it off. I'll never forget Jenna's face when she saw the deed. She stared at that paper like it was my death certificate. "Cole," she said, her voice sharp, "I married a man with dreams, not a broke farmer clinging to a worthless piece of land." Then she packed her things, zipped the last bag shut, and walked out the door. Watching her leave hurt worse than losing any house ever could. That night, I sat alone feeling like everything had been stripped away, my family's respect, my marriage, even my sense of worth. The only thing that made sense was to head down to Kentucky, sell the land for whatever I could get, and never look back. But everything changed when I met the land surveyor. His report turned my whole world upside down. What he told me was buried beneath that worn-out soil didn't just change my future, it shattered everything I thought I knew about my family, about Grandpa Walter, and about myself. Growing up, love in our house was measured by how my parents looked at Lucas. He was the favorite from day one, charming, ambitious, smart, and always the one they bragged about at dinner parties. Whenever he walked into a room, Mom and Dad lit up like he'd just cured cancer. When I walked in, I got a polite nod or a quiet reminder to do better next time. I was the dependable one, the one who held things together but never made them proud. And that difference between us only grew stronger as we got older. Lucas went on to become a hotshot financial consultant in Los Angeles. Sharp suits, shiny black Mercedes, clients who treated him like royalty. I took a different road. Construction work, contracting jobs, long hours, and steady paychecks. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest, and I thought that was enough, at least until I saw how differently my parents treated us. The day they announced the inheritance, that difference hit harder than ever. We were all sitting in their living room in L.A. Lucas leaned forward, grinning like he already knew what was coming. I sat back, bracing myself, trying not to expect anything. Dad cleared his throat. "We've made our decision," he said. "Lucas, this house will be yours. We want you to raise your family here, keep it in the Carter name." He handed Lucas a folder, the deed, and Lucas's face lit up like it was Christmas morning. Mom hugged him and said through proud tears, "You'll make this place even better. I know you will." Then Dad turned to me. He picked up another folder, slid it across the table, and said, "Cole, you'll inherit Grandpa Walter's farm in Kentucky. 40 acres. It's not much, but it's something solid. He always wanted you to have it." I opened it, and all I saw was a faded black and white deed to land I hadn't stepped foot on since I was a kid. No crops, no livestock, just dust, weeds, and memories of what used to be. Grandpa's pride hadn't kept that farm alive, and now it was mine to carry. Lucas sat there clutching his deed, already picturing renovations and housewarming parties, while I sat there trying to hide the anger boiling in my chest. It wasn't about jealousy, not really. It was about what it meant. They gave Lucas a future, something shining and stable, and they gave me a burden. When Jenna and I got home, she didn't even try to hide her disappointment. She tossed her purse on the counter, turned to me, and said, "Are you serious, Cole? Your brother gets a mansion in Los Angeles, and we're supposed to celebrate inheriting a dead farm in the middle of nowhere?" I tried to stay calm. "It's land," I told her. "We can sell it. Maybe it's worth something." She shook her head. "Worth something? It hasn't produced anything in decades. You think I'm going to be a farmer's wife in Kentucky? That's not what I signed up for." Her voice broke, and for the first time I saw something in her eyes that wasn't love, it was resentment. I stood there gripping that folder, wishing I had any kind of answer that could make her stay. But deep down, I knew what she felt, the humiliation, the disappointment, because I felt it too. My parents had told me I was second best, and now my wife was confirming it. The days after that were heavy. Jenna barely spoke to me until one morning, she just said she was done. She packed one suitcase, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "You're a good man, Cole, but good doesn't pay the bills. I can't spend my life tied to nothing." And then she was gone. That night I sat on the couch, the farm deed spread out in front of me. The paper felt heavier than it should have, like it carried every failure I'd ever made. My brother had success, my parents had pride, my wife had left, and all I had left was 40 acres of forgotten dirt mocking me from a distance. Sleep wouldn't come, so I drove. Through the city, past the neon glow of Los Angeles, where everything looked alive except me. Every street reminded me of what I didn't have, while Lucas's new house stood just a few miles away, glowing with possibility. Meanwhile, my future sat hundreds of miles east, in Kentucky. And as I gripped the steering wheel that night, I made myself a promise. Whatever that land was, I wasn't going to let it define me. If it was worthless, I'd sell it and move on. If it had even a sliver of value, I'd take it, rebuild, and start over. Either way, I was done being chained to my parents' favoritism and my wife's disappointment. What I wanted most was freedom, even if it meant selling off the last piece of my family's legacy. That night, the decision came easy. I was going to Kentucky. The morning after Jenna left, the silence in our apartment felt heavier than the air itself. Her side of the bed was cold and empty, the closet half bare, and the living room looked like someone had torn my life clean in half. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the farm deed like it was mocking me. It was the only thing I had left, and it felt like a bad joke. I imagined Lucas walking through the halls of that big Los Angeles house, our parents smiling proudly at him, while I sat there in an empty apartment with nothing but a few sheets of paper tied to a dead patch of dirt. I drove to work, but my mind wasn't in it. The sound of hammers, saws, and engines couldn't drown out the noise in my head. Jenna's words, my parents' disappointment, Lucas's smug grin. By lunchtime, I couldn't take it anymore. I walked out, sat in my truck, and pulled out my phone. I searched for a land agent in Kentucky and found a guy named Henry Lawson. He sounded like the kind of man who'd been selling farmland since before I was born. 40 acres in Rowan County, I told him. I just want it gone. Carl asked a few questions: location, condition, any history on the land. I did my best to answer, though it had been years since I'd seen the place. When he was done, he sighed. Well, son, if you're hoping to sell quick, you won't get much. Maybe a few thousand if some hunter wants it. That soil's been dead a long time. A few $1,000s. For 40 acres. My grip tightened on the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Carl continued. If you're serious about selling, I can hook you up with a local surveyor. You'll need a report before we list it anyway. After I hung up, I just sat there staring at the windshield. Lucas had been handed $1 million home, and I was holding on to land worth less than a used car. That truth hit me like a brick to the chest. I slammed my fist against the steering wheel so hard my knuckles split open. That night, I packed a small duffel bag. I couldn't stand another day in Los Angeles. Every streetlight, every billboard, every palm tree reminded me of everything I'd lost. So I decided, I'd drive to Kentucky, meet the surveyor, get the land assessed, and sell it for whatever I could get. Even if it was pennies, it was better than staring at that damn deed and feeling worthless. The drive was long and lonely, hours of empty highway and my own thoughts keeping me company. I thought about Grandpa Walter, the stubborn old farmer whose name sat on that deed before mine. He used to tell me, this soil's got history, Cole. You just have to respect it. Back then, I never understood him. To me, that farm was just a place where summers were spent sweating under the sun, pulling weeds, and following his barked orders. When I turned 18, I left and swore I'd never look back. Now, miles deep into the drive, I couldn't help but wonder if inheriting that land was his final lesson, or maybe his way of getting the last word. My parents had said Grandpa wanted me to have it, but it didn't feel like a gift. It felt like a punishment, a weight I couldn't shake. The motels I stopped at along the way all looked the same: faded carpets, humming air conditioners, and pillows that smelled like old smoke. I'd lie there at night staring at cracked ceilings, thinking about Jenna's last words. I didn't marry a broke farmer. Those words had more sting than she knew. I wasn't even a farmer. I was a man with dead land, no wife, and a lifetime of bad comparisons. A man who measured his worth in failures. When I finally crossed into Kentucky, the air felt different, heavier, older somehow. The wide highways turned into winding roads lined with tall trees and scattered mailboxes. I rolled the window down, let the wind hit my face, and breathed in the smell of cut grass, wet earth, and distant with smoke. It smelled like the past, the kind you can't ever really escape. My stomach twisted as I followed the GPS down a gravel road toward the farm. The moment I saw it, my heart sank. The farmhouse leaned like it had given up trying to stand straight. The paint was stripped away by decades of storms, windows broken, roof curling at the edges. The barn's roof had holes so big it looked like the sky had punched through. The fields were nothing but cracked dirt and waist-high weeds. The fences were more vine than wood. I stepped out of the truck and stood there, listening to the wind drag through the emptiness. No tractors, no birds, no signs of life, just silence. I wanted to scream, to ask the universe why this was my inheritance, why this was my path. Instead, I pulled out a cigarette, my first in years, and lit it, letting the smoke burn the edge off my frustration. The next morning, a dusty old pickup pulled into the drive. Out climbed Dean Porter, the surveyor Carl had mentioned. He was in his 50s, sun-worn face, hands like leather, and a look that told me he'd seen more broken land than most folks see in a lifetime. He walked up, shook my hand, and said, "You must be Cole Carter, Walter's grandson. I remember your granddad, tough man. Loved this land. Wouldn't sell it, no matter who asked." I nodded, not sure what to say. "Well, I'm not him," I finally replied. "I just need to know what it's worth. I'm looking to sell fast." Tom gave me a slow nod. "All right then, let's see what you've got." He grabbed his tools from the truck bed and started toward the fields. I followed, my boots crunching over dry dirt, feeling smaller with every step. As he set up his equipment, I stood back, watching. The sun was high, and sweat trickled down my neck. Anger sat heavy in my chest. Anger at my parents, at Jenna, at myself. This was it. Everything I had left depended on what some stranger found in this worthless dirt. But a part of me, a quiet, curious part one didn't want to admit existed, started to wonder. Why had Grandpa refused every offer to sell? Why had he held on to this land like it was something sacred? I didn't know it yet, but that question was about to rewrite everything I thought I knew. The first morning I spent on the farm, I woke to birds chirping outside a cracked window. The bed creaked beneath me, the floor groaned, and a thin layer of dust covered everything like time itself had settled in. I sat up and looked at the deed lying on the nightstand. It was just paper, but it felt like it held my entire life in its folds. I thought about Jenna, about Lucas, probably sipping coffee in his designer kitchen while our parents beamed at him, and about Grandpa, who'd insisted this land meant something. All I saw was a field of failure and a house on its last legs. Tom showed up right after sunrise. His truck rattled into the driveway, gravel crunching under the tires. He climbed out, clipboard in one hand, measuring gear in the other. "Morning, Cole," he said in that steady tone of his. "We'll start with the boundaries, then take some soil samples." I followed him across the property as he marked points, took notes, and drove stakes into the ground. The silence between us was heavy, the kind that forces you to think about everything you don't want to. Hours passed. Tom worked carefully, stopping now and then to study the ground near the tree line. Finally, he turned to me and said, "We'll test the soil first. That'll tell us whether there's any life left in it, or if it's truly dead." I nodded, trying to sound like it was no big deal. "I just need to know if it's worth selling," I said. "If not, I'll take whatever I can get for it." Tom studied me quietly, his gaze steady. "Your granddad never thought that way," he said finally. "He turned down more offers than I can remember. Folks drove in from other states trying to buy this place, and he told every single one of them no." "Why?" I asked, the frustration rising in my chest. Why hang on to a farm that couldn't even stay alive? Tom shrugged, brushing dirt from his hands. "Some men see land for more than what it grows," he said. Walter was one of those. He never told me exactly why, but I'll tell you this. He wasn't letting go of this place for anything. His words didn't settle me down. If anything, they stirred me up even more. I thought of Grandpa's sharp eyes and the way he'd talk about legacy while I wiped sweat from my face under that punishing summer sun. Back then, I figured he was just being stubborn, too proud for his own good. But now, standing there on that same land, I started to wonder if I'd missed something important all along. We spent the rest of the day tracing the fence lines, checking soil patches, and watching Tom dig into the dirt like a man searching for buried history. He sealed each sample carefully, labeling every bag with neat handwriting. By the time the sun dipped low, he packed his gear and said, "I'll run these tests and dig into the county records. Give me a couple of days, and I'll have a full report." I nodded, but my gut twisted. 2 more days of waiting. 2 more nights in a house that groaned every time the wind moved through it. That night, I built a small fire in the old stone fireplace, sat in Grandpa's rocking chair, and watched the flames shift and crackle. My phone buzzed on the table beside me. Lucas's name flashed on the screen. For a second, I thought about letting it ring, but curiosity got the better of me. "Cole," he said, his voice smooth and smug. "Heard you went out to Kentucky. Trying out the farmer life now?" His laugh was sharp, slicing right through me. "I'm not playing at anything," I said, keeping my tone even. "Well, when you figure out that land's worthless, you can always crash here. Maybe I'll even let you have the guest room. Mom and Dad keep saying how proud they are of me for fixing up the house. You know they never really expected much out of you, right?" My hand tightened around the phone. "Good night, Lucas," I said, and hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. His words lingered like smoke in my chest. They only confirmed what I already knew. My parents had never seen me as anything but the spare, the one who didn't measure up. To Jenna, I'd been a failed provider. To Lucas, I was just a shadow he liked stepping on. That night, staring into the dying fire, I made myself a promise. I was going to see this through, no matter what Tom's report said. I wasn't crawling back to Los Angeles with my head down. If this land was worth something, I'd sell it and start over. And if it wasn't, then I'd walk away knowing I'd faced it head-on instead of running. The next morning, I drove into town to clear my head. Rowan County wasn't anything like Los Angeles. Main Street had a diner, a hardware store, the post office, and a few mom-and-pop shops lined up like something out of an old photograph. Everyone seemed to know everyone. When I walked into the diner, the conversation slowed and a few heads turned. A man at the counter squinted at me. "You're Walter's grandson, ain't you?" "Yeah," I said, not sure how else to answer. He was a stubborn old man. The waitress added, pouring coffee into my cup. "Never sold a thing, even when folks offered big money. Said the land had secrets worth protecting." Her words hit me hard. Secrets worth protecting. I stared out the window, my coffee growing cold, my thoughts spinning. What had Grandpa been guarding all that time? What if I'd been wrong about him? What if the land wasn't a curse after all, but something else entirely? That question stayed with me all the way back to the farmhouse. The fences, the broken barn, the quiet fields, they all looked the same, but they didn't feel the same. For the first time, I wondered if there was more to this inheritance than just a pile of bad luck. 2 days later, Tom's truck pulled up the drive. He stepped out holding a thick folder, the kind that could either save your life or ruin it. My chest tightened as he approached, boots crunching on gravel, face unreadable. This was it, the moment that would decide everything. "Careful, Cole," Tom said, gripping the folder before handing it over. "You might want to sit down before you read this." I swallowed hard and nodded toward the porch. We sat facing each other, the wind rattling the loose shutters as he opened the folder and slid a page toward me. It was full of numbers, charts, and maps that made little sense. "What am I looking at?" I asked. Tom leaned in, tapping the paper with his finger. "What you've got under this land isn't just dirt. It's one of the richest deposits of rare earth minerals I've seen in this region. Stuff they use in everything from smartphones to electric cars." He paused, then added, "This farm isn't dead, Cole. It's a gold mine." The words hit me so hard I nearly laughed, but instead, my throat locked up. "You're telling me this land, this worthless patch everyone told me to sell for scraps, is actually worth something?" Tom nodded. "Not just something. A lot." I had to double-check the lab results because I didn't believe them myself. Those mineral veins run deep. Whoever owns this land holds a fortune. I've seen companies go to war over smaller deposits. I leaned back, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Jenna's angry voice. My parents' disappointment. Lucas's smug tone. Every moment I'd been dismissed, written off, made to feel small, flashed through my mind all at once. All this time, I'd been sitting on a treasure. And maybe, just maybe, Grandpa had known it all along. Grandpa knew. I whispered under my breath. Tom tilted his head. "What's that?" "My grandfather," I said louder this time, my voice steadier. "He must have known. That's why he never sold it. That's why he turned down every offer. He wasn't just being stubborn. He was protecting it." Tom gave a faint smile. Protecting you, more like. Sounds like Walter to me. He wasn't much for explanations, but he sure understood the value of things. Maybe he saw something in you the rest of us didn't. Those words hit me harder than I expected. My whole life, I'd believed I was the forgotten one, the disappointment, the son who never measured up. But maybe Grandpa had seen something in me all along. Maybe that was why he'd chosen me. He hadn't just left me land. He'd left me a purpose, a chance to prove myself. I stood and walked to the edge of the porch, staring out across the fields. The weeds and sagging fences no longer looked like symbols of failure. They looked like camouflage, hiding the truth beneath the surface. What I'd always seen as a curse was really a gift, one so big I could barely wrap my head around it. Jenna's face came back to me then, the way she'd said she couldn't stay married to a broke farmer. The irony stung, but instead of hurt, I felt relief. She'd walked away before she could see what this land really was. She'd chosen Lucas's world of shiny things over something real. And now, she'd have to live with that. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was my mother. I hesitated before answering. "Cole," she said, her voice breathless. "We just heard from Lucas. You had the farm surveyed. What did they find?" I looked over at Tom. He gave me a slow nod, as if to say, "This one's yours to tell." I took a deep breath. "They found it's worth more than you could possibly imagine," I said. "Grandpa left me something you'll never understand. He left me a future." There was silence, and then my father's voice cut in, sharp and skeptical. "Are you saying that land has value?" "More than your house in Los Angeles," I said evenly. "More than Lucas's entire career. You both called it worthless, but it turns out, it's the best thing I've ever been given." Before either of them could answer, I ended the call. My hand shook, not from fear, but from something else entirely. Power. For the first time in my life, I felt it running through me. Tom closed the folder and stood up. "What you do next is your call," he said. "Companies will be lining up once this news spreads. But don't rush it. Take your time. Think about what you want, not what anyone else expects from you." I nodded, my chest swelling with something I hadn't felt in years, pride. Not the kind that comes from someone's approval, but the kind that comes from knowing the truth. That night, I walked the fields under a sky scattered with stars. The air was cool and clean, and for the first time since Jenna left, since my parents dismissed me, since Lucas's cruel laughter, I didn't feel broken. I felt chosen. Grandpa had trusted me with something sacred. He'd seen strength in me that I couldn't see in myself. This farm wasn't a burden, it was a legacy, and it was mine to carry forward. The night after Tom showed me the report, I hardly slept. I lay awake listening to the old roof creak and the wind move through the eaves. The air smelled like dust and old wood, but I didn't mind. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was sinking. Instead, I felt like I'd surfaced and could finally breathe again. Every wound from Jenna, every careless word from my parents, every smug smirk from Lucas, they all began to fade beneath the weight of what I now knew. This land wasn't dead. It was alive with possibility. And I wasn't the forgotten son anymore. The next morning, I walked the property again, and everything looked different. The weeds no longer mocked me. The broken fences no longer felt like shame. Even the silence felt full, like the land was whispering its secrets just for me. Grandpa had left this place to me, not to Lucas, not to my parents, me. And that truth settled deep into my bones, changing the way I stood, the way I breathed. It didn't take long for word to spread. In a small town, news moves faster than any headline. People stopped me on Main Street, wanting to know if it was true. Some congratulated me. Others looked jealous. A few made quiet, cutting remarks that I ignored. For the first time in my life, people weren't comparing me to Lucas. They were looking at me. About a week later, my phone lit up with his name again. This time, I picked up. "Cole," Lucas said, his voice overly bright. "Mom and Dad told me about the minerals. That's incredible. Listen, maybe we can work together. I know people, big companies. I can help you handle this. We're brothers, after all." I almost laughed. For years, Lucas had been the one in control, the one with the career, the house, the spotlight. And now, he was scrambling to grab something that wasn't his. "No, Lucas," I said quietly but firmly. "This is mine. Grandpa left it to me for a reason. I'll figure it out without you." He tried to argue, but I hung up before he could finish. This time, there was no guilt, no second guessing. I didn't need his approval or anyone's. The next day, my mother called again. Her tone was softer now, almost pleading. Cole, maybe we were too hard on you. We should have seen your potential. Your father and I would like to come visit, talk about the future. I closed my eyes for a moment and let her words sink in. For years, I dreamed about hearing them say that. But now that the moment was here, I didn't feel triumph. I felt peace. I appreciate that, I said gently. But the future I'm building here is mine. Grandpa trusted me with this, and I'm going to honor that. There was a long pause on the other end, then a sigh. We only want what's best for you. I know, I said softly. But what's best for me isn't what you ever imagined. When I hung up, there was no anger left in me, only clarity. A few days later, Jenna reached out. First a message, then a call when I didn't answer.